world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's your host Kate Byrne. What does it take to build something that lasts, whether it's a company, a culture, or the stamina to swim for miles in open water, like say, the English Channel, like one of my guests today did? Well, in this episode of Women Advancing, we're going to find out, because I get to sit down with two women who know a thing or two about endurance, resilience, leading with intention, and the burnout we encounter more and more these days because of such crazy times and ever-shifting sands. Maryam Sharifzadeh, founder of the B Corp ZaaS and previously mentioned long-distance swimmer, brings the perspective of an entrepreneur who's building with impact in mind. Joining her is Candice, founder of the Workplace Psychologist, who helps leaders and organizations navigate that crazy, messy, and very human side of work: trust, culture, burnout, and the psychology of building thriving teams. Together, the three of us are going to explore what it means to grow with purpose, battling burnout, how to balance grit with grace, and why building trust, whether it be with stakeholders externally, employees, or frankly, and most importantly, yourself, may be the most important leadership skill of all. Let me know what you think. Let's dive in. Women Advancing crew, we are in for the biggest treat of all today. Why, you might ask? Well, I'm going to tell you. Because we have two amazingly powerful and centered individuals who are going to help us get there, at least for this conversation. So I'd love to welcome Maryam Sharifzadeh, who's the founder of ZaaS, and Dr. Candice Balluru, who's the founder of the Workplace Psychologist. Welcome to Women Advancing, you two.
Thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure. So a little background. I've known Maryam, I guess it's been about 6, 7-ish years. Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting is, aside from launching ZaaS, and before that, Office Yoga, which became ZaaS, she is an extraordinary long-distance swimmer. And I'll let her share a little bit about that. So you can toot your horn, because I always think it's good when women toot their horns. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm going to start a little bit, kind of teasing that out a bit, Maryam. So what inspired you to actually get ZaaS off the ground? And how, if at all, how has long distance swimming experienced or shaped your endurance as a founder?
Oh, weaving it all together. Business, just like open water swimming, there's never perfect conditions, right? So there's always something that comes up. And I started ZaaS because I was a personal trainer, I was a fitness instructor, and everyone I was working with, whether it was a client or a class, everybody was coming in because they were stressed from work. And so to me, there was a natural transition of, well, if they're coming to me because they're stressed from work, why not bring this to work and get to the root of the cause? This is me at like 25, 25-year-old Maryam goes and starts Office Yoga. And luckily, I was at the right place at the right time, and there was a strong need for it. And then Office Yoga evolved into ZaaS because, people needed more than just yoga and meditation. So ZaaS does everything with speaker talks and classes and workshops, burnout retreats. So that's what got me into leading ZaaS. I started as a yoga teacher, fitness enthusiast, and now here I am, a business owner. How did I get here? I never meant to do this.
The accidental entrepreneur. And then how about the swimming too?
The swimming, so I was a swimmer at an early age, but I started open water swimming because of grief. I lost my childhood sister in a plane crash. It was a very dramatic plane crash. It was all over the news. We saw it on the news before we actually confirmed that she was, in the plane. So, it was just imagine absorbing something that way. And so it was hard for me to process that. And I was like, I have two choices. I can go crazy and just go off the rails and let everything fall apart, or I could channel this grief in something that is productive and positive. And she loved Lake Tahoe, and I was kind of dabbling in open water at that time. And
Right.
so I just thought, I'm going to swim across Lake Tahoe, and it was, to me at that time, was crazy. And so that's kind of what started it all in the training. And it was really an embodiment for her. And, I'm still grateful to her for that.
That's really lovely. And now, why don't you share a little bit some of the other waters you have crossed?
More recently was the English Channel. Thank you very much.
You heard that correctly, everybody. All of these waters, by the way, are freezing.
Yes, very cold. And the English Channel was a 4-year endeavor. That was not an easy one to cross by any means.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest one I've ever done. But I've also swam around San Francisco and around Manhattan. Any body of water I can, I will jump into it. So.
Gosh. Oh, wow. All right. Well, deep water. We'll talk about jumping in deep. Candice, talk a little bit about the workplace psychologist and share
So,
about.
yeah. The workplace psychologist is mostly a consulting firm that I created as a result of my work as a psychologist inside some big name companies like Meta and Twitter. And what I do is work with organizations that really want to ensure the health and well-being of their employees. What I realized in working in the luxury of tech is that not everybody can have a psychologist on staff, and to advise them on certain issues and scenarios that come up. And so I thought it'd be great to have a consulting firm that really we just work with organizations on how to build policies, how to build programs, what to do in certain circumstances where we didn't anticipate a mental health issue coming up. So I'm really trying to meet my clients where mental health and organizational well-being kind of emerge.
Merge. So, what's really interesting, which it had a little light bulb moment there. It's interesting to me that a lot of tech companies are the ones who actually have psychologists or organizational behavior. I knew a very renowned one back in the day that Apple had, and they probably were early day. But I think that's really interesting and shockingly, no offense to everyone listening, but you have to admit it's a little surprising and counterintuitive given just the work culture. So it's almost as if we're going to help develop you and set you up because we're not going to change our culture. The culture is what the culture is. So suit up, man and woman, and they, them, all, and grab your paddle and dive in. Is that kind of how?
Yeah, it does. It's so a lot of what I learned working in the corporate side is that like psychological burnout is such a pervasive problem because the expectation is that when you're working for one of these companies, you will be working 70 to 80 hours a week sometimes, and that's the norm. So they would pose to me like, how do we make these employees last longer? How do we keep them happy in these jobs? And after a certain point, I've talked with Maryam about this many times where it's just like, you all need to look in the mirror and look at what you are doing as a company that can provide an environment of psychological safety and recharging and being okay with failure.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. But so what do you think the biggest blind spot? Would you say that's the biggest blind spot that these founders and executives miss? Is that, oh my gosh, it starts with me. I need to kind of be the change.
Yes, I would very much agree with that statement that companies don't think about the impact that they have on their own employees and the environments that they create, the cultures that they create. They believe that if they hire individuals who are strong enough that they can withstand any kind of environment, it doesn't matter. And so like a lot of times the analogy I give is, if you were at a pet store back in the day when they really had pet stores, now not so much, but if you were looking at a fish tank and it had all these goldfish in it, and you saw maybe one or two kind of floating at the top, and you're like, oh, that's too bad, they didn't make it. But if you saw a whole fish tank that had all of the fish that were just floating at the top of the water, you wouldn't blame the fish. You would say the water needs to be changed or something needs to be switched out. It's not the fish. And that's the same thing that's happening in organizations where we're seeing troves of individuals who are suffering from burnout and other types of anxiety. And the company is just saying, well, that's not really our problem. Here's an EAP. Go use them and figure it out.
So, question for you then, because this is kind of a nice lead into grit, right? And you both deal with grit in different ways. What does it actually look like in practice? I'd love to hear how you both sort of see that. And kind of how do you cultivate it? How can you grow it, as it were, not like mold, but.
I would see grit as, it's passion and perseverance for a long-term goal, really. And, Kate, we were just talking about this, that before we started recording, that we are really trying to change the way that we do business. And you and I you've been in this longer than I have, but it feels like we've been doing this work for so long and it's still so novel. Like, it's not concrete in anyone's mind. There's no real blueprint for it. And to me, that's the long-term goal. And that is so important because that's what's going to really change from the top down and from the bottom up. We need to change the way that we do business in a more holistic way. So for me, the passion and perseverance, the grit that comes from work is just really believing in that. That keeps me motivated every day.
That it can. Candice, how about you?
So for me, it's a combination. And when I coach executive leaders on this too, it's looking at what is your recharge plan on a regular, almost daily basis. I think a lot of us depend on the week of vacation that's going to happen in 6 months, and we just need to make it until that time, when we need to be very mindful and curate as much as possible the days that we have for those little moments of recharge, even if it's 5 minutes. Because if we think of ourselves like a cell phone battery, like if you put your cell phone on the charger for a week, that doesn't mean the battery's going to last for 6 months because you put it on a week. Like, batteries don't work like that, and neither do we. So we have to really think about what are those opportunities that I have throughout the day that I can take 5 minutes to enjoy my coffee or take 10 minutes to just play with my dog, like really kind of restorative practices rather than thinking about, oh, that vacation, that's going to make everything better. So yeah, that would be my.
Yeah, because I think that's really true, that even just a bite-sized nugget of and really what we're talking about is presence. Mm-hmm. Of doing the simple act of where you are and getting simple enjoyment out of a simple thing that just takes you away of that which seems seemingly crazy. And that can be incredibly refreshing. I know for myself, every once in a while, my family laughs at me, but I literally will close my eyes and take what I call as a short nap, 10 minutes. I was like, and then I come back up. It's amazing how powerful and refreshed you can feel.
Absolutely.
When you do all that. I'm going to work it in, and I feel kind of trendy and doofusy for doing it, but you're both, Candice, you're in the Bay Area too?
I'm in Seattle.
Oh, you're in Seattle. Okay, well, same kind of same.
Very similar culture. Yeah.
I was going to ask, okay, actually even more so because of some of the companies up your way. AI. Right, you knew it was coming. I know everyone's worried about it taking their jobs, etc. But have you seen things amped up? I know, for instance, in the Bay Area, we're hearing all sorts of stories about how San Francisco's coming back to life. Mm-hmm. And yet I just was listening to NPR and they were doing a huge report where there's some sort of pink early warning signs that AI is in fact taking jobs away from this group of college graduates, and we're about to see more. So I'm just kind of curious, how is that impacting both of your realms of practice?
So in my sphere, especially even in the therapy world, like AI chatbots have gotten a lot of momentum around, well, these can be therapists now. And so then therapists are freaking out and saying, well, where's my job, my role.
Right.
And I encourage people to think about AI not as taking over your job, but more or less being able to take away some of the mind-numbing and difficult, like just tasks that you're not really that thrilled about. Like, so for therapists, they can do our clinical notes and they can just help with like touching base with your client when the session isn't happening and seeing how their homework is going, like those kinds of things, rather than thinking about they're going to take my job. So AI is a tool. It's not necessarily a replacement, would be my biggest suggestion on how to see AI.
Yeah. Miriam, how about you?
Yeah, we, in San Francisco, we're kind of at the hub and at the start of, we've had this for a while now. And I agree with Candice that it's more of a tool that will help people support them in what they do. I don't think it will take over as many jobs as we think, especially in my world. Like I am a yoga teacher, movement modality. Like, I'm sorry if you're getting, like, there's AI is not going to
love you.
Your physical body. Like you want another human being to interact with you in that realm. So in my world, I actually feel somewhat AI protected. And if anything, yoga classes are exploding because I think people are frustrated with the amount of interaction with AI and not enough human connection.
Yeah.
So I think we're maybe a little bit ahead of everybody else elsewhere. We're getting sick of it. We've had self-driving cars for years, like half the, and so we just want to interact with other humans. Right. And so I think that there will be a trend eventually kind of going back the other way where we will, AI to me is novel. It's new, all these virtual reality.
Shiny toy right now.
They're new, but eventually interaction like this is going to be novel again, and I think people are going to crave that. And maybe that's years from now, but I don't see it taking over the way that people are anticipating it to take over.
Yeah, no, I I definitely agree. And I think, I don't know, I always sort of see it to your point. Also, Candice says, oh my God, it can take a bunch of the drudgery away. And there are things, the humanistic side, compassion, empathy, there's nuance. And it won't, I don't care how smart it gets, it won't pick up on that. And I really think all the more reason why it's so important that we work with the folks in the tech companies is it's the people who are creating the algorithms that need to be sure that they're getting rest, that they're not burned out, that they're not vindictive, they're feeling heard, and all those sorts of things. So
not there's guardrails. I think that we need guardrails around like ethical boundaries set in place.
Yeah. And I think that the problem is the technology is evolving so fast, it's hard to keep up with it. So even if there are pauses where we can say, is this really the best idea? Should we really be allowing AI to be doing quote unquote therapy or letting them call themselves therapists, for example? But, that's another one of many problems. But to just kind of go back for a second and just say, like, technology, even before AI, technology has been replacing jobs. AI is one part of technology. Like when I was in high school, I used to work as a photo developer in 1 hour photo lab. Those jobs don't exist anymore. And really the key to resilience is being able to constantly reinvent yourself and have multiple kind of like interests and options going in front of you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I just think there's going to be this time. Ironically, it'll bring out to both of your points, the humanity and the hunger for it. So Maryam, I want to ask, I often reference Steve Jobs in his 2005 commencement speech to Stanford, where he talked about everybody has these times and these ways in their life and their career where there are dots, significant dots. And when you look back at where you are, you'll realize, oh my gosh, that was like my key kind of differentiator. And so I'm kind of wondering, and then the rest makes sense. And for him, it was taking that calligraphy class because that's what made the novelty made the Mac so magical. Question is, do you think like, is long distance swimming, do you tap into that? Do you think that's part of your, sort of special magic fairy dust that you draw upon? So, like, I'm thinking about pace or rhythm or mental toughness strategy when you're kind of navigating that whole roller coaster that is called being in business.
Well, that's a very good question and a complex question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways I think I can answer this. I think what's so grounding about open water swimming for me, and, this kind of ties into the AI conversation we're having, is we could be so in our heads about things and be future tripping about like, what is AI going to do, or just anything. Like we could be very much in our heads. And when you're in the water, there's really nothing else you're thinking about.
Yes.
But being in the water, especially here in San Francisco Bay Area, we have strong currents. And we have wind, we have cold water, we have strong currents, we have great whites. Like there's just a lot to, there's a lot
You got a lot.
You're scaring me.
Like life and death obstacles. Thank you very much.
So, when you're in that world, everything on land feels a lot less dramatic.
True.
But for me, like when I'm in the water and I'm swimming, if I'm swimming against the current, I'm swimming in place, it's so frustrating. But it reminds me, like the tides change every 4 to 6 hours, and it's like the tides will change, or you just come back and you try it another day. Like just the current always shifts. If I'm on a very long swim, I know that the current is always going to change. And it's very similar in my duration of business, where I've been in business as an entrepreneur for 14 years. And sometimes it feels like I'm swimming with the waters, like I'm going with the flow.
Right.
Everything's easy breezy, like the world is on the same page, I'm on the same page with the world. And then there's times like currently where it feels like I'm just swimming in place, like wellness, employee health is no longer in vogue. Like we're not really paying attention to the environment anymore. Like these sort of conscientious efforts and thoughts aren't prioritized in the way that they have been in the past. And it's very disheartening in the moment, just like swimming in place, but I have to remind myself I've been here before and the tides will shift. Like this isn't going anywhere. Like we do have to prioritize people and our employees. And so whether it's momentarily we forget about them, it's going to come back. Like there will be a shift where we realize we can't neglect this.
Candice, how does that fit in with what you see in your world as you're dropping into these different companies? Because we just talked about, so God help, a 4 to 6 hour tide shift. But with tech, to your point, it changes so quickly. So how does that land in your realm?
So it is, and Maryam and I talk about this a lot, where it's just like employee well-being isn't really a trend right now. It's not the fad. But it's very similar, I think, to like the economy, where sometimes we're in an upswing and then other times we're headed towards a recession. And it depends on the current conditions, in this case of the job market, where we might see a swing in the other direction. And it's really just about waiting for the right time to kind of like jump back in. It's kind of like doing double dutch. And once you find that swing, you can hop back in, but not getting discouraged by, as Maryam was saying, like the fact that this isn't a priority right now, because the world is so complicated, in how we run businesses, how we see the economy, and everything that's happening right now in the United States is just
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And numbing at the same time.
Yeah, and so it can feel like we're drowning. But the tide's going to come back, and you just got to be ready to make that sprint when you have your opportunity to go for it. And so that recharge strategy a lot of times is going to be your biggest friend, of like, how do I preserve my energy so that when my opportunity comes available, that I'm ready to just sprint and make it happen.
So, in those times of crisis and uncertainty, how do you both think leaders can communicate with integrity, whether it be to a team of stakeholders, even to themselves, even when I just, everyone wants transparency. So many the various, stakeholders within a company, multi-generational, and now we're multinational companies. I mean, to your point, it is so complicated. And sometimes, is it better not to respond at all? Okay.
I don't see any scenario where it's better not to respond, because if you are not informing your employees, your customers about what is happening, if you're not addressing it, then that means you're leaving an idle mind to make up stories.
Right.
And you want to control the narrative. And by addressing, even if you don't know the answer, if you're not sure, it is okay to say that. I think there's probably more of an issue around being vulnerable with your employees or your customers, that this is just an uncertain time. We're not really sure. As soon as we know something, we will tell you all. But that way, you're not leaving them hanging. And it gives your employees the sense that they're being treated like adults, like they're being trusted. Because you also see this common dynamic where employees are almost treated like they're children, like they're not mature enough to handle what's happening at the company. And so let's just not inform them. And then, the stress that goes up from that.
Right. Need to know. Maryam, how about you?
I actually agree with Candice on this. There's a regular cadence of communication. Always, I think over communicating is always better than not communicating at all, and I have to work with our clients on communication strategies, just around well-being programs. But I think, to me, having a regular cadence of communication that goes out is important. And even if that communication is nothing has changed, we're still in the same place, or we still don't know, this is what it is, and this is what we're thinking. Any kind of communication is better than leaving an idle mind to wander.
Well, and obviously this is all about just speaking the truth, what is, and obviously, and building trust. Why do we have still to this day such a hard time doing that? I mean, I don't understand, I guess, because are people afraid of looking weak, or, we're not going to get political, but in terms of people not wanting to, looking the other way, or not wanting to look as though they don't know, or they're not in the know, because it seems like such it's because we're dealing with humans. It seems like from the outside, such a kind of a easily, if you tell people the truth, they may not always like it, but at least they know where they can move forward from. Why do some leaders still to this day have an issue with that, do you think?
I would, first of all, kind of say I think this is partly due to how male-dominated leader like there is a need to have this more authoritarian presence, and that's tolerated if you are a man, versus women, where we are, I think, far more into communicating with what is happening, and be that compassionate leader. Again, this is just a generalization. It's not, across the board. And then I also think you're seeing this difference with the generations that are transitioning in leadership, where boomers and maybe a little bit of Gen X are, again, more of that mindset of, we don't talk about what's happening behind the scenes. They don't need to know. They don't want to know. And if they know, they can't handle it, or there'll be a mutiny, or whatever. The consequences just blow out of proportion. Whereas now we're getting, closer to millennial and Gen Z leadership. And that, I think you'll see kind of a bigger change as the ranks change.
Yeah, I guess I just... to the point of gender difference in terms of power or leadership, it's also one of the reasons why I would love to see, and it seems to me that AI would be actually a natural partner for women, because it's really, we have this opportunity to make it a collaborative relationship. Mm-hmm. And yes, men are good at collaborating, but instinctively women are. More so, that's what we do. It's how
we have to.
It's how we roll. Exactly. It's how we get stuff done. And I think there's such an opportunity for women to get more involved, and yet the numbers are somewhat abysmal. And so everyone listening, get going, hop in, seriously, because this is a terrific opportunity for us, I think, to really help shape this next generation of company culture, of tech usage, of all sorts of things.
Yeah. And I will say too, like, as I have a 1.5-year-old son, and a new part of learning about what it's like to be a woman in the workforce has really come to life for me. I mean, granted, I knew this before, I'd worked in benefits, and so really understand, but the environment for women to be supported in joining company leadership is not where it needs to be. There is now the support for remote work is just continuing to go down and down and down, and it is driving women away from the workforce that would be amazing leaders. And so that for me has been kind of a big learning, especially with having my own child.
Right. I guess what we'll just have to do is utilize AI, build companies, and then go from there. Set it up and change it that way, right? Sort of turn the tables on everybody. What do each of you do, like, for your source when you're feeling kind of burned out or a little drained? What do you turn to reignite, refuel, and what gives you hope?
You want to go, Maryam?
Yeah, I will say, and I hope I don't piss anyone off, but like, I don't get burned out.
Well,
Very often. And I will tell you why, because I plan my breaks in advance. I don't wait to get burned out to take a break. Another thing I've learned from marathon training is, I swim hard for 5 weeks and then I have a week of rest, and I have to give my body and my muscles that time to recoup and rebuild. And, and I picked up from marathon training that our brains are the same. The way that I work is the same. And I think I've done this intuitively, I've always taken some breaks, but I'm more scheduled about it. And so, every 4 to 6 weeks, I'll either have a weekend or a time off, and I have regular breaks throughout the week as well. But it's kind of embedded in my work schedule where I don't get to that point. Not to say that I don't have stressful days or stressful moments, but I don't get to the point of like, I'm
breaking.
I don't ever want to do this again. And so, I do maintain that hope. I do maintain sort of that sense of level-headedness for duration. And I think it's because I schedule them in advance.
Candice, how about you, especially with a little 1.5-year-old?
My key has always been to basically diversify my identity as much as I can. I am very passionate about what I do. I have a PhD in it. And so you have to be passionate if you get a doctorate in something. But at the same point, passion can be a double-edged sword. And I was learning over my corporate career that I was just living and breathing it all the time. And I never set it down because I loved it so much. But at the same point, it was hurting me. And so now, I have a child, so that forces me to be in my mom role. I love to, I'm learning a language right now, so I spend time on that. And I lean into my other passions, which are like music. So really just diversifying your identity, like you diversify a financial portfolio, is like a super big key for me.
And I know, so, and along those lines, I know one of the things that I believe you're working on together, right, is a burnout retreat. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's I could use a little.
Yeah, a little while ago, Candice reached out to me. So Candice and I met when she was working at Twitter. We were sort of the vendor that she reached out to for office yoga and meditation and practices. And we grew very close in that working environment. We both went through a lot of obstacles together. I think it was maybe July of 2018 or 2019, something like that. And it took 6 months to kind of get the program up and running. And 3 weeks of it going, the pandemic happened. So for all that work, we just had like one thing after another kind of come our way. But together, we actually navigated that, I think, very well. And we grew to really just appreciate each other's strengths. And, so time went on and we sort of moved on from that, from Twitter. And she reached out and said, hey, I have this idea of a burnout retreat. And I think you knew I had led some retreats. And so I just thought she wanted my advice on like how to get it going. And I was like, sure, these are the things you do. You should. And she's like, no, do you want to co-lead one with me? And I was like, oh. I was like flattered. I was like, really?
That's awesome.
So Candice, you can speak a little bit more to the content, but it'll be in Austin, April of next year. Marble Falls.
Yeah, Marble Falls, Texas. It's a great place in the hill country, just right outside Austin. And it's at the Retreat Ranch, which has a great set of horses outdoors, big sky, and there'll be Texas bluebonnets. If you've ever seen Texas bluebonnets, they are peaking that time of year. They're a gorgeous flower. And really, this is about a combination of helping our participants get centered, take that pause away from their lives, and really kind of figure out what is going to be the action plan going back into the real world. Because like vacations, we wait for that time, and then as soon as we get back, the same problems are still there. So instead of taking just the vacation, which we're going to have plenty of downtime and rest time and, playing with horses, things like that, we also want to make sure that we have a strategy coming back into our lives so that we don't repeat the cycle of burnout again and again and again. So our retreat will be a week long. And we're just so excited about the different activities and the location and really the people that we're going to meet on this retreat.
That's wonderful. And I'll be including information, everyone who's listening, where you can find information about that. We'll be sending out links on that. So with all of this, what has surprised you most about yourselves on this journey? Like, what have you learned about yourself, or what surprised you most about yourself?
I think, honestly, that I still have the capacity to keep going. There's a while where it's like, I thought being a business owner, like you get it up and going, and then once it's going, you kick your feet up and you're cruising along. And it is not that. It is reinventing yourself and your business originally every 4 years. Now it feels like every other year. It's probably going to be more often with the evolution of technology. But, I feel like I always find a way, and it's the adaptability, it's that grit, it's that resilience. Right. It's really that passion for that long-term goal. Like I do think, especially as hopefully women and just a new generation of leaders come through, we really think differently about business and how we operate. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be here for that.
No, you will be, clearly. And Candice, how about you?
For me, I remember at the beginning of my career, especially when I was even just like trying to choose a major, graduate school, like I felt very much that if I didn't choose the right thing, then my path would be permanent and I couldn't undo it. And what I'm finding is that the more open I am to trying new things and meeting new people and pushing myself, like it opens more pathways, and you can have an amazing career without necessarily saying, if I follow this recipe and I do this thing, then everything will be great. Like I don't really have career goals. I want to have a good time. Right. And so I'm like, Maryam, let's go do this retreat. Like, sounds like fun, right? Let's go work with us.
We got all the pieces. We got it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and I think, one thing too is each of you has such a sense of intentionality, and I'm looking at, Maryam, I know ZaaS is a B Corp, which is no small feat. Let's face it. And Candice, do you see, I mean, I'd love to, like, how has that enhanced your business and sort of brand halo effect of being a B Corp? And then Candice, how do you see those types of designations impacting workplace culture? Does it? And I ask that because we know younger generations have all said, and frankly, older generations wanted it too. We just didn't talk about it. Younger generation at least has the oomph to sit there and say, I want to work with an entity that is purpose driven, has values, actually walks the talk. And that's probably why they're so discouraged, is so few do. But with B Corp, yay, impactful, effective. What do we think?
My experience of being a B Corp, I think the biggest value I have in embodying the policies that we have to put in place, what I've really found is that my retention of the people and the clients that I have is so strong. Okay. I have people that come back or just don't ever leave. And I think that's really undervalued in a lot of bigger organizations. They think they view people or just as resources or dispensable. And for me, it's that not only the people that work for me, they're so happy to be there that they bring in clients, and the clients are so happy to be with us because the people that work with us are so happy to be here. And so it's just a cyclical effect that continues to evolve the business on very little resources, to be honest. It didn't take much. It's just creating that healthy environment, that clean water for the fish to swim in. It really creates this dynamic that it's enticing, it's engaging, like people want to be around that. And I think that's really the future of business. Is we want to start working with people and companies that have that, they're intentional. They have that, just the way that they think and act and behave is in unity.
Yeah. And there's that positivity, and let's just face it, positive energy, it's infectious in a really good way. You want that. You want to be around that. Candice, what do you see?
So, 100% agree with what Maryam said. I think especially this generation, but what we've seen in the psychological research with burnout is that when there's a mismatch between your values and the company's values, it doesn't last as long. And I've asked a lot of different workshop participants, how many of you have worked for a place where you feel like you sold your soul? And almost everybody raises their hand. Double hand. And then I say, how long did you last? And for some people, it was like a month, 3 months, where it's like, I've even heard somebody say like 15 years. And I'm like, wow, that's a long time. But it's becoming our view on work is that we should not be living to work. It should be working to live. And embracing that comes with me, like, I'm not going to make as much money, but I work for a place that I like, I agree with, and I can sleep at night. So that I think is a strong transition we're going to see with the next generations.
Yeah, I liken it to, one being, we talk about imposter syndrome, but then you feel like an imposter because it's hard to live fake lives. Mm-hmm. And second, to me, I liken it to half-heartedness and doing everything half-heartedly. That is just such a drain on you. One of the hardest things. And in the end, that is exactly what, selling your soul feels like. And it's giving up. It's actually not respecting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're seeing it even too now with, boycotts of certain companies for their values or the withdrawal of those values sometimes, because it's like, I care about where I put my money, and I'm not going to give my money to a company that doesn't value its employees, doesn't value certain policies, or doesn't do what they say they're going to do. And so again, with the newer generations, I think you're going to see more accountability for that.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. It's interesting too. I have a daughter who's 30, and it's always fascinating when we have conversations because I'll say a statement. She'll say, see, that's the thing, Mom. That's just not really a thing. It's something you all just sort of held on to. But does it really matter to you? It doesn't. If it doesn't, get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And she's right. It's like, yeah, you're right. I don't even know where that came from. So So, well, then that's kind of a nice lead into my next question is if each of you could give one piece of advice to women leaders, wherever you are, coming up behind you, what would it be?
I would say be willing to start before you're ready. Just be willing. You will never feel 100% ready to take on the endeavor of starting your own business or stepping into that leadership role. And if you need an affirmation or a mantra, as I am willing to start before I am ready, trust me, it will fall into place. But that action and that momentum of just getting started will create the opportunities and the things that you need to fall into place.
That's your perfect conditions. You're never going to have perfect water.
Yeah.
Never gonna have
Yeah.
perfect conditions.
Yeah, I mean, and that fits into with imposter syndrome of really just like I used to think that way too. It's like, well, I need a degree in this in order to, talk about it or to do it. And it's like, you don't. Like you have to be willing to learn as you go. And that's okay. But I think for women, we have a tendency to kind of like feel like we need to be competent in some way to have some kind of validating form. So yeah, I think that's great. Great advice. The other thing I would just say is like, do not be afraid to reach out to other women and ask for advice, like mentorship, because it's just so impactful. It's been impactful for me, and I know it's been impactful for the people that I've mentored. And just to like give a shout out, I recently joined the Society of Working Moms, and we just have like a Slack group where we have like one channel that's just screaming into a void. like, and we get our own frustrations validated. Like having community, especially if you are an entrepreneur and you really don't have a lot of like coworkers, is so important to feeling like you can continue moving forward.
Do this. No, absolutely. Well, so now knowing what you know, what advice would you each give your younger selves? Give advice to the others. Now it's time to hear what would you have said to yourself?
I mean, for me, I just sort of been like, stop worrying so much about the future. like you're never gonna have this part of your career back. like, and each moment is a gift. It's just sometimes hard to see it, especially if you're learning something new and feeling frustrated. But everything you can take with you. So how do you want to put that in your backpack so that you can bring it along with you for that knowledge? So because I think I was overly concerned about, again, that right path, like I have to be doing things right. Whereas there's no right or wrong way. And if you're going to be a pioneer, you're going to create that way.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of times, especially these days, now I really think because of the times we find ourselves in and the sands ever shifting, we're completely in uncharted territory. I was trying to explain this to my daughters and saying, I'm just realizing I'll be able to, share some pearls, but take it what part works and it may not, because honestly, never been through this part before. So we're all going through it together. And that's to me the reciprocity too of mentorship and sponsorship is, hey, we're all learning. But and Maryam, how about you?
Along the same lines, I would probably tell myself, if it's not working, let it go. I think there's times where I would hold on to something too long, even though maybe I just needed to let it go and sort of move along and evolve. And I think I've gotten much better at that. So I don't I'm a little bit more, I let it just naturally come to, and I hold things lightly. I'll say that. I'll hold things lightly. I appreciate it when it's going well, and if it's not, I don't mind letting it go. I trust in my creativity a little bit more, knowing that I can meet the market where it's at. If anything, I'm usually ahead of it. So I just trust that process a little bit more.
Do you think the reason why, because I hear you on that, do you think the reason why we hold on so tight, is it because we're stubborn? Maybe?
Again, I'm going to talk about psychological research. So
No, bring it. No, I think it's
so we have a series of biases, and one of those biases is actually the sunk cost fallacy. So the more time you put into something, the more you're willing to keep putting time into it to make sure that it works, even though it would be best if you just cut your losses and say, not every idea is gonna work. That's okay. But
right.
It's like the same thing with a jackpot machine. It's like, I'm going to keep putting money in it and it's going to eventually pay out. Right.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe some of it too can be familiarity. If you just know something so well, the idea of trying something new for some is very hard, to have to recreate and reinvent yourself. And to say that, to go back to what you were saying, Kate, about being in sort of unprecedented times, like we were saying the same thing 4 years ago, 5 years ago to the pandemic. We're like, we've never been through this before. This is uncharted territory. Here we are again. We're like, we've never been. This is uncharted territory.
So true.
We navigated that. This is the same, but different, so we'll get through this too.
And guess what? There's going to be another uncharted territory headed our way before you know it. It's the age all change is the only constant. And, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So embrace and light touch. Well, Maryam and Candice, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I know people are going to go straight and sign up for the fabulous Burnout Retreat. I might be among them. I'm just
We'd love to have you.
Yeah, really, really appreciate the time and the intentionality and the depth of conversation. So kudos to you. And we're really lucky that both of you are touching so many lives as you are with what you do every day.
Thank you, Kate. It's an honor to be here. And it's great to see you as always.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Kate, for the space and the time.
My pleasure. Till next time. Wasn't that a great conversation? I think Maryam and Candice shared a number of key points that can help all of us counter burnout. Something, let's face it, in these crazy conditions and times, we're all facing and having to tolerate. Because as we know, as the old adage goes, change is the only constant. So with that in mind, I loved the first point that Maryam had brought up that she took away as her open water, long distance swimming self. Having swum across the English Channel, around San Francisco Bay, throughout Manhattan, and that is, you're never going to have perfect conditions. So if you are getting ready to start a company or thinking you might want to try something new, do it. It's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be a little something else that could be tweaked. But when the majority of those items align, go for it. Do it. And second, if something isn't working, let it go. This is something we all do. It's so much easier said than done. Why? Because literally you get drained. And when you're working in a work environment, as Candice shared, where your values are not those of the company, it's scary to do, but in the long run, rather than depleting yourself, it's time to start looking for something new. There are better fits out there because nothing is more draining than working half-hearted for sure. And finally, stop worrying about the future. Focus on the now. And I know this is another one that everybody says, but it really bears repeating. And it's so easy to future trip, especially these days again. So try to stop, take a beat, focus where you are right this minute. And perhaps that's also a sign that you need to take a sec. And even if it's a 5-minute little interspersed injection of just you time throughout the day, you'll be amazed at the impact that makes. And we can learn a lot more from both Maryam and Candice at their upcoming Burnout Retreat, which is going to take place in April 2026 out in Texas, Marblehead, at the Retreat Center. Lots of interesting and fascinating activities that will leave you permanently shifted. So with that, thank you as always for listening. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what other subjects you'd like to cover. And I'll see what I can do to find someone who can share what they're working on. With that, thanks so much. Really appreciate you. Until our next conversation.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.